What do you mean by core personality? Are you talking about the actual person, or are you talking about a sub-personality that's in charge?
The real person. That's
Okay.
what they call the core personality. And what we didn't realize is when that started to be effective, they created another program called KOR. And it was a self-destruct program.
Reid, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Just like the Bible says, it's basically an intergalactic invasion into this space through people. I'm telling you, it's what all the ancients said, it's what they warned of, it's what we're dealing with. They're demons.
And the satanic cult and coven that's hidden in this Christian church lives like a Christian. Okay, not every one of them, because I wasn't, and I know of a couple other who weren't.
Repent now, repent now. A Secretary of State that has had sex in giant vats of feces. They have sexual rituals, some of the most ancient Egyptian rituals, where they believe they are possessed by entities, basically space aliens.
The minions of the evil one can travel through telephone lines. They can travel through cable TV. They can travel through the internet into your computer.
Repent now, repent now.
I used to worship this guy, okay? And, I don't know if you can see it well on my camera, but you can have a look at this one here, okay?
They're frickin' interdimensional invaders, okay? I'll just say it, make fun of me all you want. Oh, God. I don't think I've ever laughed this hard on air. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous.
Hello, my friends. So this is the first of a series on satanic ritual abuse and the accusations made by a gentleman by the name of Gregory Reid on a program called Through the Black. So I'm going to be looking into and researching a lot of his accusations and also a lot of the claims that he makes during this interview. I hope you enjoy.
My memory of things is one thing, and then I find out later that it's actually somebody saying something different. So I needed to verify this before I actually was able to be very clear in my mind that Anton Szandor LaVey faked his death certificate to make it look like
Even Jared is like, really? And this is somebody who has a lot of pretty outlandish beliefs.
He died on Halloween night, when in fact he died on the 29th of October. So obviously the coroner of San Francisco is in cahoots to be able to falsify a death certificate.
So I went to the Church of Satan website and I looked at their frequently asked questions section. And one of the questions is, how did Anton LaVey die? He died on October the 29th in St. Mary's Hospital, a Catholic hospital associated with the University of San Francisco. He was brought to St. Mary's because it was the closest hospital to his residence. He had never been treated there before. Although there has been some confusion with his funeral records, some listed Halloween as his death date, rumors that his death had been caused deliberately by a Christian nurse are grossly false. First of all, the idea that somehow Anton Szandor LaVey knew beforehand when he was going to die and also knew which hospital he would be going to, also who would be in charge of creating his death certificate, and then somehow paying and manipulating that person to falsify the records, the person in question agreed to it, understanding the severe repercussions that falsifying documents such as a death certificate would hold. Doing it regardless is completely and utterly ridiculous. The error was caught on Anton LaVey's death certificate, and lines 7 and 114 were amended to change the date of death from October 31st to October 29th, as well as items 1, 2, 3, 33, and 36, correcting spelling of family names. Errors, although rare, do happen. That is why there is an amendment form. Usually, family members are required to submit a change request.
That Barbara Bush's mother had connections with Crowley, okay?
Okay, I've heard this one before, but let's see where he's going to go. Okay, so Barbara Bush has connections with Aleister Crowley. Do tell.
She's been in the vicinity. They were at the very least, pen pals, okay?
So they've been in the same vicinity? They were, if anything, at least pen pals. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. If they're in the same vicinity, why would they have been pen pals? And what proof do you have that they were pen pals?
And there's even a possibility, because when you look at Barbara Bush and you look at Crowley, they look alike.
That's it? That's your evidence? Barbara Bush looks a little bit like Aleister Crowley, so thus they're related. Your proof is, oh, well, they look similar, so they must be related. So this is how the connection between Aleister Crowley and Barbara Bush is made. Crowley was friends with a man named Frank Harris. Frank Harris's girlfriend at the time was a lady named Nellie O'Hara. Nellie was friends with a lady named Pauline Pierce. At the time, Pauline Pierce was married to Marvin Pierce. On June 8th of 1924, Pauline gave birth to a baby girl and named her Barbara Pierce, who later married George H.W. Bush. The connection is Barbara Bush's mother knew a friend who was dating a friend who knew Aleister Crowley. That is the whole connection between Aleister Crowley and Barbara Bush.
But the one thing I want to ask you is, as you investigate your own case, what advice would you give to anybody out there? Because we have a lot of listeners who are survivors, who are healed, who are, still looking for healing. You mentioned some things last week, but what investigation advice would you give to people?
Well, I guess it's not much different than what I told last time. Just document everything. There may be even a lot of little things that you think, well, this doesn't mean anything, or I'm remembering this little detail, but it's just stupid. Not necessarily. Sometimes insignificant details are the keys to bigger things. And so I think that's the most important thing. Just keep notebooks, keep remembering whatever it is you're remembering, and just keep pulling on the threads. The key to what I've done when I did law enforcement training, and one of the reasons they would actually gave me a certain amount of respect in what I did, is I was able to draw the big picture for them.
Yeah, they don't see the big picture. They're not trained in that. The reason why you are giving your testimony is because the facts of this case were not sufficient enough for any of these people to be convicted of any crime. The reason is because there's no evidence. There's no factual evidence for this. That is looking at the big picture. So Greg Reid's law enforcement training is unverified. He's avoided all opportunities to prove this. In an article written on February 13th in 2014, Greg writes, I was recently set up on a phone interview. I did innocently believing I was going to be asked about my law enforcement work. Instead, I was viciously attacked. At one point, they said, you're not law enforcement. You have no formal training. What right do you have to post what you do on the internet? Here's an article where his law enforcement training was challenged, and yet he did not offer any proof to vet himself and show that, yes, he does have a certificate or he does do law enforcement training. This was published on February 13th of 2014, almost 4 years ago. He had the opportunity to provide proof and he chose not to. I also contacted him directly and inquired of his law enforcement training. This is the email that I sent on January 11, 2018. Hello, Mr. Reid. I am curious if you can please explain which police departments and or law enforcement departments you provided training to and when. Did you hold any certification to conduct such trainings? If so, what qualifications and or certificates you held for said trainings? Thank you so much for your time. Gary then responded, why do you want to know? Sorry. Greg, the reason why I want to know is because you're coming on YouTube and you're writing and you're speaking and you're talking about how the occult and witches are running around committing murder. So, yeah, Gregory Reid, that is why I want to know if what you are saying is true, and if it is true, what evidence and what facts you have to back this up. That's why I'm asking you these questions. If you don't have any proof and it's already been investigated and no one was arrested and there was no actual crime that happened, what you are doing is you are spreading fear. You are spreading lies and you are spreading discrimination against people who identify as witches and who identify as Satanists. That is why I want to know, Mr. Reid. I've had a lot of pagans do a lot of damage over the years. Convince me of your good intentions. GR. How can people damage you with the truth? Okay. So I responded on January 12th. I said, thanks for getting back to me. I don't have any good or bad intentions. I have seen you on the show Through the Black, and I have my own YouTube channel. The link is below. I do videos on occult things, mostly correcting false information. However, I try and look at things with an open mind and allow the facts to speak for themselves. Currently, I am researching SRA cases, and I have consulted with several sources, and I am interested in understanding your background as a law enforcement trainer. The statement was at 00:28 minutes and 38 seconds of satanic ritual abuse with Greg Reid, which aired April the 5th, 2017 on the Through the Black YouTube channel when I did law enforcement training. If you want to clarify or expand on this, I can take that into account if you like. Not sure if this is the convincing you are looking for. Laughing out loud. But I assure you, I am simply looking for the truth. I am interested in which police departments you were a trainer at and what were the approximate dates. Any relevant qualifications or certificates, if any, you had. Looking forward to hearing back from you, and thank you for your time. And then I gave him my contact information. He responded, hi. I appreciate your response, and after careful consideration, especially after looking at your web pages, Facebook, etc., I think I will pass for now. I already went through this in the 1980s, and I just don't have the energy to put myself out there, not knowing if the recipient will use it to discredit me. Not that I have anything to prove after all these years, but I am sure you can understand, as I had a high priest of a Texas coven send out a massive email some years ago across the country vowing to destroy my work and my credibility. All I will tell you for now is that I was a private investigator for part of that time, and that I was a contract trainer on occult crimes and crimes against children for criminal justice departments, especially probation departments, for a number of years. If you want to check back to my website in a few months, I may possibly just post all of my work there along with contact info for those who brought me in. Most, if not all, are retired now. But I do also have a stack of letters of recommendation from these different agencies I may post as well. Then it will be a settled issue, so maybe check back. Best regards, Greg Reid. So, I am convinced that he has made this up to make his claim seem more credible. I emailed him back and I told him, I said, well, if you provide me information at a later date, I will amend this video. But as it stands, I do not believe that Gregory Reid has or ever has been involved in trainings at law enforcement agencies in occult matters. I believe that this is a pure fabrication, and unless any other evidence proves otherwise, that is my position.
I was able to say, look, we're not, if you want to look at isolated little things, you're going to have an isolated point of view. You need to learn how to connect the dots. You know, if you've got a Hollywood and you've got an Anton LaVey, then you need to connect the dots back to Jane Mansfield. If you've got a Jane Mansfield, then you want to connect the dots to who else in Hollywood was doing these kind of movies. Was there a connection with Roman Polanski? Was there more to the Manson murders than Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate just, you know, her being in the wrong place at the wrong time? And the more you start pulling on the threads, the bigger the picture gets. Now, some of that is called speculative, and that's okay. If you're looking into your own history, it's okay to speculate all you need to, as long as you don't just, for example, accuse people. I guess that's my other bit of counsel, is don't accuse people of things unless you're absolutely sure that they're the ones responsible, because these groups are very, very good at confusing the players so that you may think that it was a certain person who did something when it may be somebody totally different. So don't draw any conclusions until you know that you know, to the best of your ability.
Actually, all of that is speculative, Gregory Reid. He just showed his hand right there. He gave a perfect example of how he uses speculation to make the connection between Anton LaVey and the Charles Manson murders. Those two things are completely unrelated, but he showed us, he used his own speculative nature to use this as an example of showing connections between one thing to the other. It is very dangerous to use speculation to find guilt guilt by association. What he is doing is harmful because it is harmful to Satanists by using speculation to assume that these satanic ritual abuse cases are happening. It's also harmful to pagans. It's harmful to occultists. It's harmful to witches because it is speculation. It is not factual. There is no evidence for it. He believes that something that happened to him as a child was part of a satanic ritual. I'm going to get into his story more later on in this video series.
How old were you though when the abuse started though? Like what was the age? You were like 9 or 10, right? Or were you older?
I think I was younger, but I can't remember. There are portions that I can't remember. I can tell you I was probably 6 or so. I have some very, very vague memories of that. But it pretty much ended when I was 11, as far as that portion of my grooming, so to speak. And I'm not sure if they treat people differently because they've got different purposes for them. We may find out in the long run that there were certain people like me that they had a different purpose for that required me to be more intact. I don't know. That's all speculation for me.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to get more into Greg's story later on. He claims that sometime between the age of 6 and 11, he was involved in some kind of a satanic ritual. The culmination of this ritual, he participated in the murder of a person named Mark. This is by his own admission.
And where there was a ceremony around a bonfire, and there were a number of different elements involved in it, but at the midpoint of the ceremony, a knife was placed in my hand, and I was forced to shove that knife into the chest of my friend Mark and watched him die. A knife was placed in my hand, and I was forced to shove that knife into the chest of my friend Mark and watched him die.
All of the details of this case he remembers except people's identities. He also never gives any information about what he did with this afterwards. If this did happen, somewhere there is a family that is missing a child, and this man has the information about this death, and he has not taken it to the proper authorities so that this family can get the closure that they need. This is very troubling to me. He never took it to the proper authorities. He never followed through with it. He never sought to have the murderers brought to justice.
I started to realize how carefully we had to tread, particularly, I mean, I'm not a counselor, and I don't do counseling in this area because I know I'm not equipped for it. But I've learned enough along the way that I've been able to be very careful about warning people. We're trying to help people in this regard, that you have to be very careful. And I know you guys don't know this because you know Russ, but one of the shocks to us is in the beginning we were told that if you want to get the person healed, you have to talk to their core personality. I don't know if you've heard that or not before. To get to the core personality, so that's where everybody was kind of trained.
What do you mean by core personality? Are you talking about the actual person, or are you talking about a sub-personality that's in charge?
The real person. That's what they call the core personality. And what we didn't realize is when that started to be effective, they created another program called KOR. And it was a self-destruct program. And so that when you started to call out the core program, it actually called up a suicide program.
Which is what we see in active shooters. Every time you have an active shooter, you always see the suicide programming kick in as a failsafe.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty wild stuff.
That is interesting.
Yeah, that is definitely some pretty wild stuff there. You are not a counselor. You are correct, Mr. Gregory Reid. Or, I don't know, maybe you invented that certificate too, along with your law enforcement certificates. This whole core, contacting the core personality, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I also don't know what they're talking about with this KOR, that somehow there's some kind of a program like... I'm telling you, this is part of these conspiracy theories that they're beyond me. They're just so absurd.
Especially when you watch I don't know how to articulate this. I don't even know if I know what I believe about it. It's curious. It seems like And it just seems this way to me from my own experience.
Well, that's never really stopped you before, so go ahead, speculate away, Jared. Speculate away.
That the darker and more evil the subpersonality you're dealing with, set aside from any form of demonization. You know, some subpersonalities can be demonized. Not all subpersonalities are. But the more evil the subpersonality you're dealing with, it seems like the larger the pupils get, almost. You know, it's like when you see a switch and all of a sudden those pupils dilate and all the color of the iris disappears and you're just looking at a black set of eyeballs. It's like, okay, it's all of a sudden it's like game on. Like, you're on guard. This is where somebody might get hurt. You know, every time I've dealt with something like this, I've got somebody that just runs a cell phone, you know, just in case I don't have my hands in the next 2 seconds because someone comes across the table. You know, it's like you got to have somebody's got to be able to call the cops, you know, if I can't get to my phone, you know. But sometimes you have a personality switch and just the color of the eyes change, but it's a soft switch and you're dealing with a subpersonality that's identifies as a 10-year-old boy or a 60-year-old black woman or whatever, you know, whatever it is. The intensity of the subpersonality seems to be represented in the eyes. Would you agree with that?
Well, and I think that's scripturally accurate. There's some things about, you know, the eyes being the windows of the soul or something. I don't even know if that's in the Bible. I think it is somewhere. But, you know, Jesus talked about the health of a person. That the light of the body is the eye. You know, the eye is it's where you can see so much in a person's eye. You know, that's the first indication I always get if somebody's possibly demonized. It just kind of pops right up there in the eyes. It's a crazy thing to watch.
You can see it.
This is right up with like medieval doctors who believe that they could drill holes into people to have the evil spirits leave their minds when they're suffering from schizophrenia. They believe that people are possessed by demon spirits, and you see that in their eyes somehow. Either they get darker or lighter, or somehow change color. So these are the type of people that we're dealing with. They believe that people are possessed by demon spirits. It's really funny when there's actually like an actual murder going on. They don't call the police. Yeah, don't call the police because the police are in cahoots with the Satanists, and it's the CIA and the government and everybody. It's all a global conspiracy against Christians. But when it comes to somebody's eyes dilating or changing color, yeah, then they're on the cell phone quickly to call the police and say, hey, there's somebody over here who's possessed by a demon. I need your help. Oh, man, this is insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, you can see it, and then you feel it.
The first time I saw somebody on a church board meeting, that everybody trusted in, her eyes went diamond back when nobody was watching. It's when I realized, man.
You mean like reptilian?
Yes, like a diamond
like
back.
A slit?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never seen that. I've never seen the split in the eyes. I've never seen that. I've heard about it, but I've never seen it. Huh.
Okay. All right. I really wanted to concentrate on the satanic ritual abuse aspect of these videos that I'm going to be doing video responses to. I'm not going to explore the concept of reptilianoids being on some kind of a church board. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much, and blessed be.